because this is unscripted, this is no slides, this is our senior team, although all of us truly have so much expertise that they're all quite senior on our team. But to get us rolling here, what is one piece of advice that as counselors, strategists, mentors in this world, you find yourself giving over and over and over again? What's a gem that you give again and again?
If you want advice, ask for money.
I'll.
Was that intentional?
3 and 2, 3.
Testing. So here we go. All right. So my first advice always is stop and pray. As head of school, so many times you feel like you need to react and you need to make a decision, but action isn't impact. Pause, breathe, and sometimes even say to the person, I need to reflect on this. Give yourself a little bit of grace. And it's amazing what can happen when you do pause to pray and ask for inspiration from the Holy Spirit in making your decision.
I'd say, too, there's a difference in being busy and being productive. I've never gone into a school where I've been invited to come and coach, and they look at me and they say, Greg, we're so glad you're here because, we're pretty busy, 3 of the days of the week. But the other 2 days, we're just sitting around looking for stuff to do, right? Most schools are really, really busy doing stuff. But are they doing the things that they should be doing? Are they doing those high-value activities, especially as a frontline fundraiser, that really help produce the revenue for the school? So taking a moment, especially in the month of July, and auditing your time and how you spend your time as a frontline fundraiser can really help move the needle and make you more productive for the next fiscal year.
To add to Greg's, I would say, sorry. My advice is make 5 phone calls before you do anything else. Call 5 donors every single day. Stewardship, cultivation, solicitation. Make those phone calls before you do anything else because like Greg said, you'll be busy the whole week and the week will end and you'll think, uh-oh, I didn't call anyone. I didn't talk to any donors.
So I come from the enrollment management side, but this is applicable also for all events. When you are hosting an event, we so often think, I'm going to do this. Stop first, pray, and think, when they come to this event, what do I want them to feel? What do I want them to think? What do I want them to say about my school? So really that end in mind. What do we want them to feel, think, and say or do?
I would say, whatever it is you're thinking about, get started. Start. Move forward. If you're going to fall forward. But move forward. You can't wait for the moment because it isn't there. Get started. Start implementing the things. Start putting things into action that you're thinking about. And if you mess up, keep moving forward.
Thank you. So there was a lot presented this week. And a lot of people have come up to us and said, my gosh, my head is swimming. What would you advise, one practical move that someone in this room here could take back in the next 30 days and do because of what they learned this week?
One of the first kind of easy things to do, but it will get you into action, is to write a thank you note to somebody who made it possible for you to be here. And in that, say, a takeaway that I have is. So you're thanking them and you're showing value.
It's a mic drop.
Oh, yeah.
I always tell people that try to find 5 top half dozen things that you can take away from here and begin to implement immediately. Because we've flooded your heads with all kinds of information, but now it's time to prioritize. So take those top 6. You might start with the top 10. You might start with the top 20. Whittle it down to 5, and then rank those 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are your action steps starting next week, since we all started the fiscal year today, right? And in this business, the clock gets to midnight, and all of a sudden, we have raised 0.
0 to 0.
Right?
To piggyback on Chris, I would say once you have those, pick which are your short-term and pick which are your long-term. What's the low-hanging fruit you can make happen immediately versus the things that are going to set you up for success for years to come?
I was talking to someone in the lobby just a few minutes ago, and she was typing away on her laptop. And I said, "What are you doing on there?" She says, "I'm writing it all down in tabs before I lose it in my head. I'm just trying to sit here and think about all the things that are different about the way I'm thinking about my work and I want to do as I leave here." I said, "That's awesome." I said, "Give me an example of one of your things." And she said, "Well, do you want a funny one?" I said, "Okay." She said, "This is literally one of my tabs." And it came out of Monsignor Shea's keynote speech. I said, "Yeah?" She said, "Learn and memorize the history of the Catholic Church."
That would be long-term.
Long term, yeah.
Oh, anything else? That was pretty good. Okay. So this is a good one, and it's a hard one, but one that we see a lot, and I think, people want to hear. What separates schools that make progress from the ones that keep circling and circling around the same issues?
Investing for resources. Tell your finance directors when you get home, you need another person in admissions and another person in advancement, and your school will grow exponentially.
Run it like a business, serve it like a mission. To tag on to what Katie just said, the high-performing schools that we serve have one thing in common. They write their SMART goals, and they keep up with them. When you go to a ball game, there's a scoreboard in the corner of the gym, and at the end of each quarter, the basketball team comes to the sideline, and they review what's happening, and they look at the score, and then they make adjustments, and they keep moving on to halftime, and then into the third quarter, and then into the game. We keep score because we like to know if we're winning or not. How do you know if you're winning in your school if you're not tracking your goals? How do you know what it looks like to win if you don't have clarity? So write your SMART goals, and then work your SMART goals every year, and move your business forward.
I have no empirical data to back up what I'm about to say, but usually I never have that. So, nothing. So, I would bet my life that the successful schools also have longevity in people who are in place. Meaning, in the nonprofit world, people are usually moving now 2, 3, 4 years gone, maybe 5 years gone, 2 years gone. Schools that are successful have people in place so that those relationships can be sustainable over time. And it's not, oh, here's a new advancement person, and then 2 years later, there's another one, and then 2 years, there's another one, and we're changing head of school every 2 to 3 years. Schools that succeed have a team that is in sync and stay in place over time. Some 10 years, 15 years. Once in a while, somebody moves in and out, but the corpus is there. Stick where you are. If you love where you are, and if you're somebody's report to or superior, the president, take care of the people that you value. Take care of them. Don't make somebody come out. Do you think I could have my first raise in 5 years? No. You offer them a raise. You pay them more because you want them to stay. So longevity, tenured positions, delivers results.
To go with that, invest in your people. I work on the search side so much now, and when I meet with search committees and they say, we want somebody who loves our school. Great, who do you have internally? Nobody. Identify talent, invest in them, and love them up.
I would add, in my elevator speech, when people ask me, what's the key to the successful ones versus the less successful ones, one term I use, it's just basically what people are saying is time on task. You got to do the time on task, and you can't do the time on task if you don't have people to do the time on task. But the second one, we had fun with communication this morning, but impact. Those organizations that have figured out how to tell their story, their narrative in an impactful way and the impact they're making tend to be the successful organizations.
Relationships, and maybe that's similar to what Chris just said and what Phil just said. How do you build those relationships is through communications, through investing. But when I say relationships, I mean not just with your donors, but the relationship between the teachers and the students, between the faculty and the staff. Yes, with your donors, yes, with your parents, with your greater community. You need all of those relationships. And how about with your board? Don't underestimate the power of your board. But give them a plan, tell them some guardrails, empower them, but let them know your vision so that they stay and they can execute that. But to me, it's all about relationships.
A piece of advice that we often give to people about boards is if you're a head of school or a president or a principal and you report directly to a board, prioritize one-on-one time for you with each individual board member regularly. Coffees, breakfasts, lunches, stopping by their office, inviting them in your home on a Sunday evening to have dinner with you and your family. Those moves right there can move mountains with your board. They know you. They know what your goals are. They know what kind of support you need. They understand the vision that you have for how a board can really help you. I mean, take time one-on-one individually to get to know your board members and vice versa. Pivotal. What else would you say about board members, team, and boards in general?
Positive?
That's not for today. Okay, I have a question, though. Seriously, Jim, I've met you all week long, brother. Good to meet you. Jim Levin's here. His title is Advisor to the Board of Directors. What does that mean? No, I'm serious. I want to hear this.
I was asked to serve on the board, and I would have been happy to do so, but there apparently is a bylaw that says a board member cannot have a relative who's on the faculty of the school. And I have a nephew who's a teacher at the school. So I am now...
So we jury-rigged it.
So I'm not on the board.
I like it.
I'm not on the board, but I'm on the board.
Advisor to the Board of Directors.
Mystery solved.
This is brilliant. How to bypass the bylaws. Okay.
What was the question again?
I'm not letting you off the hook in terms
What
of...
makes a good board member?
Yeah,
What?
yes. I mean, like, people ask us all the time, my board doesn't do this. My board doesn't give. My board doesn't read the minutes. My board doesn't help us the way we need to. What say you?
I think it starts with us. How many of us have been intentional with identifying the right board members and sitting down with that board member when we go to recruit them with a written job description to tell them this is what it looks like for you to win as a board member. Here's what the expectations are. It's a 3-year commitment. We expect you to attend the meetings. We expect you to make us one of your top 3 philanthropic priorities. We're going to invite you to support us. And really giving them a chance to be successful, right, through the onboarding process. I got a phone call from an organization my mom volunteers for. They asked me to serve on the board. She calls me up, Greg, we want you to serve on the board. Great. What does that look like? Greg, I don't know. Well, and I coached her through it. So as you're building your board, this is what we want to do, right? Let's give them expectations. Let's set them up to be successful from the start. Again, it goes back to clarity. Show the board members what it looks like to be a good board member. We can't have expectations for them if we don't share with them those expectations first and give them clarity.
I think to extend off of that, how many here serve on boards themselves? I learned more about what my board members needed by being asked to serve on a board and sitting on the other side and being like, hey, this stinks, right? And looking and saying, is this how I'm doing things too, right? So sitting in that seat myself, having that experience allowed me to see it that way and change how I was working with my boards. So I would encourage you yourself to serve a group like that yourself and learn from that seat.
I like knowing what the roles and responsibilities were and then having a best practice based on what role they had on the board. So hopefully every board member has a position specific. Are they on the advancement committee? Are they on the enrollment committee? Are they serving on the Catholic Identity Committee? And then tell them what that best practice looks like as a specific member of that area or domain, and have them sign it. Here are your roles and responsibilities. This is what best practices look like, and sign the document. And it's always nice to have the mission up at the top of that document too. Then they're locked in. It's kind of like your student handbook. You got to have them sign off on it. Have your board members sign off.
Use committees to vet your board members and to get the work done. So don't have a board member who wasn't on a committee that you haven't seen how he or she works. So we say agendas rule, committees work, boards decide. So vet your board members by having them on a committee first.
Building on both Kathleen and Katie, I mean, we all know leadership matters, right? We see leadership changes in a school and everything changes. Yet sometimes I've seen where boards fall apart is when there's not the same intentionality given to who are the leaders on the board. Don't just let the chair be the person that happened to be one and be willing to be the chair. You have to have intentionality about who is the chair of the board. If the board's large enough to have a committee structure, you have to have intentionality about who is the chair of the development committee, who is the chair of the enrollment committee, and then even who's put on them. Right? We give the thought to which person is the right person in each role, and then we add a new person to the board, and we just randomly put them on a certain committee because that's where there's an opening. But you have to have that intentionality on the roles, the specific leadership roles within the board.
Sum it up with the 3 Gs. Give, get, and get the, oh, sorry, Father, get out of the way. Give, get out of the way. Give your resources, bring people into the mission, widen the net, and don't get into operations. Stay in governance. Don't get in the way.
I'm sure that doesn't happen in any of the schools here, Chris.
One of the most important committees that really high-functioning schools and boards have is their governance committee, the committee that builds their board, that keeps track of the bylaws, that sets the meetings, that thinks about what the skills are that are needed on the board, that includes usually the advancement director, so that the advancement director is bringing portfolios and bios to those meetings so that you can think about and vet who is potentially invested in your mission to join your board. I mean, think about it. Our boards are so important, and yet so many of our schools don't have a formal process for building them and maintaining them and developing them. It's a critical function that can make an enormous difference.
Yeah, if you don't, on a very practical level, if you don't have, you should have a list, a working list of potential board members and a strategy to let them be on a committee first. You should be looking at, sooner rather than later, the next generation of the key people who have been board leaders, particularly from a philanthropic standpoint, and getting them on the board, potentially involved earlier rather than later.
Absolutely. So we have a couple people, pretty much everybody, up on the stage here who have been involved in soliciting and securing transformational gifts, massive gifts. Can you tell us a story or a nugget or something you learned or just something that the group would find interesting about being involved in a massive gift to a school?
It's easier to ask someone for $5 million than their first 1,000. By the time you get to the ask of someone for that transformational gift, you have worked with that person. You didn't walk in, shake their hand, say, nice to meet you, how about 5 million? You've worked with that person. The relationship has been cultivated and developed, and you have alignment with them around where your priorities are and what their priorities are. And you've created an opportunity for them to invest in this. It takes time. It's not a transaction. This is relationships. And as a young gift officer asking someone for their first $1,000 gift, I found that far harder than sitting across the room with a person who is now fully engaged in my institution and asking them for $5 million that I know they're interested in giving, that I know they certainly have the capability of giving. There was preparation that went into it. So all the time and everything that goes into that. That $5 million ask was way easier because everyone in the room knew it was coming. Maybe they didn't know it was actually going to be $5 million exactly, but they also knew it wasn't going to be $25,000. And the conversation went from there. And that is, and the best answer that we would ever get in that conversation is, I have to think about it. If a person says yes right away, it's like, there may have been a greater opportunity there. Not that you lost. You wait. A $5 million gift's a $5 million gift. But that moment gets created over time, and everyone is ready for it when it's right.
I would say, and some of you have heard this from me already this week, but put a number on the table when you meet somebody to solicit them for a gift. Don't be afraid to. Don't be wishy-washy. Walk in with a number in mind, or at least a gift range in mind. The very first solicitation I ever made in March of 2003, I asked for a $500,000 gift, which would represented 5 times the largest gift in the history of the school. And in asking for that gift, the donor looked me dead in the eye, and his first words were, "I'm glad you came with a number." He said no, but I'm glad. He said, he didn't make, long story short, "I'm glad you came with a number." I never, ever forgot those words. And ever since that day, every single solicitation I've ever made, clients that coach and serve make, and Bree and Jen and others back there can tell you, we go in with the number, and you put a number on the table and give them something to think about.
And if I could add to that, for those of you that heard me speak, be bold. Do your research, do your work, but never be afraid to go higher, right? Most people, if you go too high, are flattered. Sometimes you get the cartoon eyes popping out of their head, and then you just say, I can tell by your expression that's not the right number for you. But I would be remiss if I wasn't doing my job for the school. What is a number that would be comfortable for you to make, right? Don't be afraid of the cartoon eyes. I'd much rather have those than the guy who pulls the grocery store checkbook out and is like, yeah, here you go. And you're like, ugh, I so under-asked, right? And now I can't go back for more. So be bold.
Sometimes we have to get out of our own head. Sometimes we hold ourselves back because we're pre-qualifying them. Well, they won't do it because of this, or they won't do it because of that. Our responsibility is to take the mission that we represent and to carry that out, that vision out to the donors that have the ability to make transformational gifts. And yes, there's an art to it, and yes, there's absolute a science to it, but sometimes action is the insurance against failure. Get out there, have the visits, learn. You don't have to be perfect. God is perfect. Don't think for a second that they're giving because you're the best salesperson, you've got the magic bullet, you've got the magic words. I'm not saying to fly by the seat of your pants. Prepare yourself. And then, as Kathleen Casey started us off, pray. Put it in God's hands and go be the tool that you are. You're an investment. You've been built with skills and talents. Use those skills and talents to represent the students that you serve and the missions that you serve, and be bold, like Katie said, and take it to them and invite them. Y'all, in the world of major gift fundraising, it's interesting. There's a part of this where they need this. They need to make this gift. I'll give you an example. Have you ever stopped and held the door open for someone, and then they walk through and they say thank you, and you felt good for doing that? It's the same emotion that's released when that donor does that. We're fulfilling that part of them. They're doing something good, and we're allowing them to do that. So get out of your own way and go take action.
So, I've closed 10 eight-figure gifts in my career. And about halfway through there, when I closed about 5 of them, I said, you hear them announced and everything, you think they just happen. I said, well, there's an intent. It happens organically, but there is an intentionality if you've got someone in your orbit who can do this. So I attempted to begin to document and set up a process for how you can be more intentional about this. Mike and I just presented it in the last session. I think everyone has access to all the decks. So look at that. It's only the second time I've shared it publicly, and so I'm really looking for feedback, what you guys think from your own experience. But take a look at that deck. And I try to create steps for if you've got someone in your orbit you think can do that, what are the intentional steps you can take to try to make those gifts a reality?
Real live example. These are words, right? So she's going to be embarrassed, but I'm going to do it anyway. So where's Bree? Bree. Bree Dragonetti is a principal of Notre Dame Prep in Scottsdale, Arizona. Bree is the head of school. Why? Because the president was resigned and the diocese decided no more presidents. Bree, you're the principal. You're now the head of the school. I think Bree started as a cheerleading coach, maybe? Prom, right? Yeah, okay. There, boom, assistant, prom, principal, and now head of school representing a capital campaign. How many solicitations did you do prior to, I don't know, a year ago? Zero. None. Right? None. You're not trained to do this, right? Bree has turned into a solicitation animal where I'm afraid to talk to her because she asks me for money in every conversation.
What are the, oh,
Yeah, so point being, for those of you who think you can't, you can. You can. Be intentional about it.
and let me say what a big, you need a big idea. Big gifts tend to come to big ideas. But let me tell you a story. I was part of the founding group of deans for the Bush School of Business at Catholic University. Catholic University didn't have a business school. We raised $80 million to launch the school. There were two $10 and one $15 million gift in that. But before we started, me and the eventual dean of the school, Andrew Bill, we'd travel the country meeting with donors, meeting with thought leaders, deans of business schools, telling them we want to start a business school to fully integrate a Catholic social doctrine in the business discipline. I would say 90 to 95% of everyone we talked to said, never work. There won't be any money, and there definitely won't be any students. There's a high school senior in the country looking to go to a business school that does that. $80 million and 800 students enrolled in the school now. Later, we did it. The point there is sometimes, I used to teach a class on entrepreneurship when I was a Catholic, and you would tell us, sometimes when everyone's telling your idea is crazy and it's wrong, you're on to something. and it is the big idea that's going to land the gift.
I coach a president at a school on a campaign, and one of their board members that he's been cultivating for a long time, really great guy, class of the 74, he's always given maybe $50,000 to the annual fund, was involved in the feasibility study that we did, and sort of before we even had a chance to launch the silent phase of the campaign, he walked into the school with a check for $2.5 million. I said, well done, Dennis, you cultivated this man very nicely. But we're not done with him. I said, Dennis, we're going to have to ask him to do a lot more than this. And Dennis was shocked. He said, we will offend him. This is outrageous to think that we would take a check for $2.5 million and ask for more? Yes. I said, Dennis, we need to ask him to either double, triple, or quadruple this gift and give him some ways to do that. So obviously, he's got some cash, but maybe he needs to think about, if he's this committed to the school, maybe he needs to think about his, plan giving. Maybe he needs to be inspired around endowment. So long story short, we did. We went back and we said, we appreciate the 2.5. Would you consider this being the beginning of a $10 million gift? Was he offended? No. He brought his wife in. We talked about it. It took about 3 months. And he came back in and he said, we're going to give you another check for $2.5 million. We'll make it 5. We thanked him. We honored him. We honored him at the gala. And then we said, what do you think about that planned gift to make it 10? Have you thought about that? He came back to us a couple months later and he said, my wife and I talked about it. We love the idea. We'll go up to 7.5 with 2.5 in our estate. Right? So that's the boldness. These people who have this kind of capacity, who are committed to your mission like that, they want to talk about what you need, what it's going to look like, what kind of impact it's going to make, and creative ways for them to put something together. And that gift has inspired another 2.5 and 3 1s. That 2.5 and those 3 1 millions would not have happened without the 7.5, because nobody likes to be the only lonely person giving transformational level gifts like that. They want to know, I'm not the one fool willing to do this, but there are other people who are in my circles with my kind of potential who feel the same way I do, and together we're going to do this for the school. So that kind of giving pool and conversation and timeline is very, very possible. This is a school that has never raised more than $3 million for anything that is now just about up at the $15 million mark, thanks to this one donor at the 7.5. All right, well, we covered that. What I'd like to do now is invite our young ones up to give away the prizes that you all are so excited to get and to show us our video. And then I'm going to end with one big, big question for you all to think about. And I'd like you to think about it while we're showing the video. And that is, what is one blessing, hope, or challenge that each of you would give to our audience here as they head home?
Live your mission.
Well, I have a blessing of gratitude to all of you. I'm Catholic school educated from kindergarten through graduate school, Sacred Heart nuns in grade school, Christian Brothers in high school, Augustinians in college, Holy Cross priests in college, in graduate school. I have 10 children who have bankrupted me sending them to Catholic schools, but it's been worth every single penny. So I see. I firmly believe, wasn't for Catholic education, I'd be out in the streets. I've seen firsthand in my own life and in my own children what the people in this room do. So my blessing is a blessing of gratitude for you.
My hope is that you understand when you go back, what you want to accomplish is there for the taking, that you see it, that you have the capability, that your communities have the capability, and that you can bring that to them and make the changes and make the improvements. But the hope is there, the optimism.
You're right about that. Optimism's a superpower. So God's got you planted at the school where you're serving for a reason. Sometimes we have to get out of our own way and remove our own doubts and our own insecurities and stop making it about ourselves and realize it's about us serving and just giving it to God and realizing that we're just there to fulfill what He's built us for. Imposter syndrome is a real thing. And sometimes we say to ourselves, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, why me? But there's a lot of examples of that, people that said that in the Bible, right? Go do what God built you to do. This year's important. You're there for a reason. So live it out.
So many of you that were at my sessions know one of my favorite books in our work is Henry Nouwen's The Spirituality of Fundraising. And it just helps us center on what we're doing, right? And what Henry Nouwen said was, those who can give money and those who need money meet on the common ground of God's love. Even a small act of generosity can grow into something more than we can ever imagine.
I hope and pray for you for full circle moments, to get to that moment when you can look back and say, oh, right, He got me exactly where I needed to be for a time such as this. You are uniquely prepared, not just in your successes, but in your failures, in the hurts, and all those things. When we can get to that moment where even the pain can bring us joy, because we know that we're holding the pain and the joy in our same praying hands.
So one of my favorite words in the entire English language is the word hope. If I would have had a second daughter, her name would have been Hope, and I'm serious about that. But the word hope has kind of gotten ruined by this saying that hope isn't a strategy. But hope is the fuel that gets you to that strategy. So my hope for you is this. Take your hope and put it in a bottle and carry it with you everywhere you go, every day of your life. And when you're feeling pulled down by the stresses and tension of life or this job, pull that bottle out, take a swig out of it, and drown yourself in the hope, because the fundamental part of our faith is the hope that was given to us on the day of resurrection, that there is something better. It is coming, That's heaven. On earth, your hope can take your mission to heaven.
Okay, we're done.